At my engagement party, my parents caused a ruckus. My mum shouted, "Give your $45,000 wedding fund to your sister right now, or this engagement is off." When I stood my ground and refused, she slapped me so hard I spun and hit the wall. I looked her in the eyes and said, "You're about to get a surprise you'll never forget." And soon my fiancé's dad walked in. My mum froze in shock because my name is Lauren Carter and I'm 30 years old. I work as a graphic designer in a mid-sized city called Oak Ridge. Life had been moving along steadily, but tonight felt like the beginning of something much bigger. I couldn't stop smiling as I looked around the softly lit restaurant. Everything felt perfect. The candlelit centerpieces, the gentle background music, the scent of fresh flowers in the air. Tonight was our engagement party, and after 4 years of being together, James and I were finally taking the next step. In just 4 months, we'd be married. James stood beside me, tall and warm as ever, his hand gently resting on the small of my back. I met him 4 years ago when he joined the creative department at the marketing firm where I worked. We hit it off during a company off-site retreat, and from there, things just flowed naturally. He was kind, dependable, and smart. We built a life based on respect, trust, and shared goals. Our closest friends and family were gathered here tonight to celebrate our engagement. I glanced around the room and spotted many familiar faces smiling back at me. Co-workers, old college friends, James's parents, and even a few cousins I hadn't seen in a while. And, of course, my own family was there, or at least most of them. My parents, Margaret and Henry Carter, sat at a table near the front. Their smiles looked stiff, almost forced. My younger sister, Emily, was there too, lazily scrolling through her phone like she'd been dragged here against her will, probably her 3rd phone this year, knowing her track record. We were never very close, and that distance only grew wider with time. Still, I pushed the awkward tension aside. Tonight wasn't about old family dynamics. It was about love, commitment, and the new chapter ahead, or so I thought. Margaret stood up and gently tapped her wineglass with a spoon. The sound rang through the room, and conversations quieted as all eyes turned toward her. "Can I have everyone's attention, please?" she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "First, I want to say congratulations to my beautiful daughter, Lauren, and her wonderful fiancé, James. I hope your marriage is full of love, joy, and happiness." There was polite clapping and a round of raised glasses. James squeezed my hand under the table, and I smiled at him, feeling grateful. But then my mother spoke again, her tone suddenly colder, more deliberate. "I also have an important announcement to make," she said, setting her glass down. "After talking it over with Henry, we've decided to give Lauren's $45,000 wedding fund to Emily instead." The room went dead silent. I blinked, certain I must have misheard her. A soft chuckle escaped my lips as I looked around, expecting someone else to laugh with me. "That's funny, Mum," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "But that money is mine. I'm not giving it away." Margaret's smile faded instantly. Her expression hardened, lips pressed into a thin line. "This isn't a joke, Lauren," she said sharply. "Your sister is getting married a few months after you, and she needs the money more than you do." A wave of heat rushed to my face. I felt my stomach tighten. "What are you talking about?" "That's my money, Mum. You and Dad gave it to me. It's in my personal account." "Honey," she said, her voice coated in forced calm, "you have a good job. So does James. Emily and her fiancé are struggling. She deserves to have a beautiful wedding too." My hands began to tremble. I stood up, trying to steady myself. "We've already planned our wedding with that money. We've been careful. We're being smart with it. We even want to use part of it for a down payment on a home. You can't just take it away." Emily suddenly shoved her chair back and jumped to her feet, nearly knocking over her drink. "Don't be so selfish, Lauren," she snapped. "You could have offered to share it a long time ago. You know I need it more than you do." I turned toward her, jaw clenched. "This isn't about need, Emily. It's about what's right. I planned ahead. You blew through your own fund, and now you expect me to just hand mine over?" She lives simply. My mother barked. "She doesn't have much, and her fiancé is doing the best he can. You've always had more. I've always worked harder." I shot back, folding my arms across my chest. I followed the rules. I saved. I planned. I don't care how you spin it, I'm not giving you my money." Margaret's face flushed crimson. The tension in the room became unbearable. James placed a hand gently on my arm, trying to calm me, but I wouldn't back down. Then, in a moment that felt like it stretched into forever, my mother stepped forward and slapped me hard across the face. The sound echoed through the restaurant like a whip crack. My head snapped to the side. My cheek stung, and my eyes welled up immediately, not just from the pain, but from the shock. The room went completely silent. No one moved. Even Emily looked stunned. I slowly turned my face back toward my mother, my voice low but steady. "You don't get to hit me just because I said no." A sharp intake of breath came from someone at a nearby table. Then I heard it, the soft voice of a waiter near the bar, speaking into a phone. "Yes, hello. I need to report an assault. It happened just now at Alden's Bistro." Within minutes, the sound of sirens could be heard approaching the restaurant. The guests remained hushed, many of them stealing glances toward me, while others stared awkwardly at their plates, unsure how to react. I stood silently, still absorbing the shock of what had just happened. My cheek throbbed, but it was the emotional sting that hit harder. James stood beside me, his jaw tense, while my father silently pulled Margaret aside, trying to calm her down. Moments later, 2 uniformed officers entered the restaurant. One of them approached our table and asked if I was the one who had been assaulted. I nodded quietly, confirming what had happened. A nearby waiter stepped forward and provided his account of the slap, explaining how Margaret had struck me in full view of the guests. Margaret tried to defend herself, insisting it was just a family matter, but the officer calmly informed her that public assault, regardless of relationship, was a criminal offense. The officers asked me if I wanted to press charges. My heart pounded in my chest, but my voice came out steady. "Yes, I do." They placed Margaret under arrest right there in the restaurant. As the officers led her out in handcuffs, I noticed Emily staring at me in disbelief, like I was the villain for simply standing up for myself. My father followed them out in silence. The room remained frozen, guests unsure of whether to clap, cry, or leave. James held my hand the entire time, never once letting go. Later that night, after speaking with my lawyer, I officially filed a report and pursued criminal charges. Margaret was released on bail the next day, but the legal process had begun. A few weeks later, we were back in court, this time not over the money, but over the slap. Margaret stood in front of the judge, who reviewed the witness statements and security footage from the restaurant. The evidence was undeniable. She was found guilty of misdemeanor assault and sentenced to a $2,000 fine, mandatory anger management counseling, and 6 months of probation. She was lucky. The judge gave her the option of a 30-day, suspended jail sentence instead of actual time behind bars. I sat in the courtroom, watching her avoid eye contact with me, and when the judge asked if I had anything to say, I stood up, met my mother's eyes, and said clearly, "I didn't expect this from my mother, but no one is above the law." After the courtroom drama faded, I thought things might calm down, but I was wrong. The slap and arrest only deepened the rift within our family. Margaret didn't reach out. Emily blocked me on everything. And my father, well, he chose silence. But the real storm was still ahead. 3 weeks after the engagement party, I came home to find a thick envelope in my mailbox, one of those that immediately tightens your stomach. It was from a law firm, Holt and Sutter Associates. Inside was a formal notice. My parents were suing me for control of the $45,000 fund, claiming that it was only meant for college expenses and that I had misused it. At first, I laughed in disbelief. The money was legally mine, set aside in a custodial account when I was 17. At 19, I received full control. My parents had told both Emily and me that we could use our funds however we wanted once we became adults. The only difference was that I had been careful, practical, and goal-oriented. I used a portion for my public university education, covered the rest with a scholarship, and let the account grow. I always planned for my future. Emily, on the other hand, had gone to a pricey private school, dropped out after 2.5 years, then spent the remainder of her fund launching a boutique business that failed within 7 months. She blew her savings on branding, an overpriced photo shoot, and even a launch party featuring rented influencers. When it collapsed, she had nothing left but a luxury car she impulsively bought, convinced she'd be a success. And now, because her money was gone, She and my parents wanted mine. I hired a sharp, calm, and confident attorney named Rachel Lane. After reviewing my documents, she looked at me and said, "They don't have a case. The account was gifted to you. There are no restrictions on how you use it. Any mention of a verbal agreement won't hold up in court." I nodded, relieved but also angry. "Then why go through all this?" I asked. Rachel shrugged. "Because some people would rather drag you down than admit they made mistakes, especially when they're protecting someone else." And just like that, I realized what I was really up against, not just a legal case, but a lifetime of favoritism, denial, and imbalance. My mother wasn't just trying to take my money. She was trying to cover for Emily's failure by making me pay for it. The months that followed were some of the most exhausting of my life. The legal case consumed everything: my time, my energy, even my focus at work. There were emails, filings, discovery requests, and multiple preliminary hearings. Every time I entered the courtroom and saw my parents sitting next to Emily, all of them avoiding my gaze, it reminded me that this wasn't just a lawsuit, it was betrayal. Emily wore smug expressions at the hearings, clearly confident that she'd somehow walk away with the money I had spent years protecting. During one particularly tense session, she took the stand and told the court that the fund had always been meant only for college. My lawyer stood and asked her plainly, "Did you use all of your funds strictly for college expenses?" Emily hesitated. "Well, not all of it," she muttered. Rachel nodded. "In fact, you dropped out of college and used the remaining amount for your own business venture and a luxury car, didn't you?" Emily's face tightened. "That's not relevant." But it was very relevant. Rachel continued. "So if there were supposedly strict conditions on this money, why were you allowed to use it for non-educational purposes without objection?" Emily had no answer. I sat quietly, heart pounding but steady, as the courtroom listened. It was all coming out now. My parents' favoritism, Emily's irresponsibility, their attempt to cover up her failures by punishing me. Outside the courtroom, James remained my anchor. He came to every hearing, held my hand through every setback, and reminded me again and again that standing my ground mattered. But it wasn't easy. Between legal fees and emotional burnout, it felt like everything I'd planned for. My wedding was being stripped away. We had to delay parts of our planning. I lost sleep. I cried sometimes in the middle of the night, sometimes between meetings at work, but I never gave up. I knew this fight wasn't just about money. It was about being seen, about being respected, and, for once, about holding my family accountable. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, they did. I was at home reviewing a list of wedding vendors when my phone buzzed with a call from my cousin, Sarah. "Lauren, I just wanted to say I'm sorry about the wedding being cancelled," she said sympathetically. My heart skipped a beat. "What are you talking about?" "The wedding's still on." There was a pause. "Your mum called me last week. She said you and James broke up because he cheated on you." My jaw dropped. Within the next hour, I received 3 more calls from confused friends and distant relatives, all asking why the wedding had been called off. Someone had even sent fake emails designed to look like they were from me, saying the event was cancelled. I checked my email and found nothing in my sent folder, which meant someone had made a fake account to impersonate me. I was stunned. My mind immediately went to Emily. I had no proof, but the pattern was clear. The sabotage wasn't stopping at legal claims, it had become personal. I called Aunt Linda, my mum's sister, and one of the few relatives who hadn't taken sides. "I was about to call you," she said with a sigh. "Your mother's been telling people you're lying about James, that you're unstable, and that the wedding was never supposed to happen." I leaned back against the wall, exhausted. "Why is she doing this?" I asked. "Because she's protecting Emily," Aunt Linda replied gently. "She's always protected her, even when she didn't deserve it. I love Emily, but your mom is enabling her, and now she's dragging you through the mud to make her look better." The betrayal cut deeper than any courtroom testimony ever could. My own mother was trying to ruin my reputation to win sympathy for my sister. James walked in that evening and immediately noticed my face. "What's wrong?" he asked. I showed him screenshots of the fake emails and told him what Sarah had said. He was furious, but not surprised. "Your sister just contacted me too," he added grimly. "She said she had proof that you were cheating on me. She sent photos." I stared at him in horror. He pulled out his phone and showed me several poorly edited images clearly photoshopped of a woman with my face pasted onto another body, standing beside some random man. It was laughably bad, but deeply upsetting. James shook his head. Of course I didn't believe it, but my parents saw them too. Your family is trying to destroy everything we're building. That's when we decided to take action. We hired professional security for the wedding and submitted photos of Margaret, Henry, and Emily, instructing that none of them were to be allowed in. I hated that it had come to this, but I wasn't going to let them ruin anything else. The morning of the wedding, I woke up with a strange blend of excitement and dread. James and I had chosen a beautiful outdoor venue just outside Oak Ridge, nothing extravagant, but elegant and personal. White chairs lined the grassy garden, all facing a wooden arch wrapped in fresh flowers. I stood in the bridal suite in my dress, adjusting my veil as guests began arriving. My stomach twisted with nerves, not from the vows, but from what I knew could still happen. We had 2 trained security guards stationed at the venue entrance, and they had strict instructions to deny entry to anyone from my immediate family. James and I had gone over every detail. Still, I couldn't relax. At around 2:15, there was a knock on the bridal suite door. One of the guards stepped inside, lowering his voice. "Miss Carter," he said cautiously, "we've just detained a young woman attempting to enter through the back service gate. She matches the photo you gave us, your sister Emily." My heart pounded. "Was she alone?" I asked. "Yes," he said, "but she was carrying a tote bag. When we opened it, we found a large can of red paint. My breath caught in my throat. The wedding dress, the venue, the guests, she had planned to ruin all of it. Rage, sadness, and disbelief fought for space in my chest. "Do you want to press charges?" the guard asked. "We can contact the local sheriff right now." I hesitated. After everything, after the slap, the lawsuit, the lies, the photoshopped photos, and now this, I had every reason to involve the police again. But this was my wedding day. I had already lost enough to their chaos. "No," I said finally, my voice flat. "Just make sure she's removed from the property and doesn't come back. Please also check that my parents haven't tried to sneak in." He nodded and left. I sank into a nearby chair, trying to keep from crying. My best friend, Jessica, knelt beside me. "What happened?" she whispered. I looked at her, my voice barely holding steady. "Emily tried to sneak in with a can of paint. She was going to destroy everything." Jessica's eyes widened in shock, then hardened with fury. "You know what? That means you win," she said firmly. "They couldn't stop your happiness, so they tried to ruin it. But you stopped them. You stood your ground. Now, go marry the man who stood by you through all of this. You deserve every bit of this day." I wiped my tears, took a deep breath, and stood up. My Uncle David, my dad's brother, walked me down the aisle. As I stepped into the garden, I saw James waiting under the arch, eyes locked on mine, and in that moment, the rest of the world disappeared. The betrayal, the court dates, the tears, the pain, it all faded. Today was about love hours. The ceremony was heartfelt and beautiful. We exchanged vows that spoke of strength, loyalty, and partnership. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, the guests erupted into applause. For the first time in months, I felt light, free. The reception was everything we hoped it would be. There was laughter, music, and heartfelt speeches from people who had stood by us through it all. Jessica gave a toast that made me cry soft, proud tears, the kind that only come after you've been through a storm and found peace on the other side. James and I danced, ate, and celebrated like nothing else mattered. And in truth, nothing else did. Nearly everyone commented on how beautiful the venue looked, how happy we seemed, and how the day felt full of genuine love. A few guests had heard bits of the drama but respected our silence. One aunt leaned over during dinner and whispered, "I'm so proud of you for standing your ground." Her words stayed with me long after the cake had been cut and the final song played. As the night wound down, James and I slipped away under a sky full of stars, running hand in hand through a shower of rice thrown by our friends. We climbed into the car waiting at the curb and drove off, both of us grinning like kids. I turned back for a second and looked at the glow of the venue in the distance. My sister had tried to ruin that moment, but she failed. They all had. Our honeymoon was pure bliss. 3 peaceful weeks in a quiet beach town far away from Oak Ridge. No courtrooms, no confrontations, just sun, waves, and the man I loved. I let myself really breathe for the first time in what felt like forever. When we returned home, I felt ready to move forward. We focused on settling into our apartment, planning for the future, and putting the past behind us. A few weeks later, I ran into my cousin, Megan, at the grocery store. After a brief hug, she asked, "Did you hear about Emily's wedding?" I raised an eyebrow. "We're not exactly talking," I replied. "Your parents took out a loan to pay for everything," she said. "It's going to be at the Grand Garden Hotel, downtown, super lavish. They're flying in a chef from out of state. It's a whole production." I couldn't help but let out a quiet laugh. Of course they were going all out for Emily, even if it meant going into debt. "Are you going if she invites you?" Megan asked carefully. "She tried to ruin my wedding with a can of paint," I said flatly. "So no, I won't be attending." And funny enough, no invitation ever came. I later heard through family gossip that several relatives declined their invitations to Emily's wedding out of discomfort with how I had been treated. Some were polite about it, others were vocal. Either way, the shine had started to wear off for Emily, and for my parents too. James and I had used the $45,000 exactly as we planned. We had our dream wedding modest, intentional, and filled with people who loved us, and we used the rest of the money for a down payment on a lovely apartment just outside the city. With our combined incomes, the mortgage was manageable, and for the first time, we were building equity instead of burning money on rent. Our home was small, but it was ours, built not with handouts, but with hard decisions and perseverance. Life after the wedding settled into a rhythm I hadn't known I needed. James and I spent our weekends decorating our new apartment. Nothing fancy, just shelves we installed ourselves, a couch we saved up for, and walls filled with photos from our wedding and travels. One Saturday afternoon, while we were setting up the guest room, James laughed as he struggled with an IKEA dresser. "Who do you think will be our first overnight guest?" he asked. I paused, screwdriver in hand. For a brief second, my mind went to my parents. Maybe in some far-off version of reality, they'd apologize. Maybe Emily would grow up and take responsibility for what she did. But deep down, I wasn't holding my breath. "Whoever it is," I finally said, smiling softly, "there'll be someone who truly cares about us." Holidays came and went, with no calls, no messages, and no invitations. At first, their absence hurt. My birthday passed quietly that year, and for the first time ever, I didn't hear my mother's voice wishing me well. But then I remembered the slap, the lawsuit, the lies, the paint, the fake photos, and the effort to destroy something pure out of jealousy, and the pain softened into clarity. James occasionally asked if I thought there would ever be peace between me and my family. "Maybe one day," I said honestly, "but if it ever happens, it'll take more than an apology. It'll take change, and I don't see that coming anytime soon." Emily's wedding eventually came and went. From what I heard, it was over the top, champagne fountains, a rented string quartet, and matching designer dresses for the bridesmaids. But several key family members skipped it, uncomfortable with how they'd watched my parents and sister treat me. Worse, the massive loan Henry and Margaret had taken out became public knowledge. They'd sunk everything into that one event, trying to make a statement, trying to pretend the past year hadn't happened. But it had, and people remembered. As James and I grew into our marriage, I realized something profound. Family isn't just the people who share your blood. It's the people who support your boundaries, who celebrate your wins, and who respect your peace. I had lost a lot, yes, but I had gained a home, a husband who stood by me through everything, and friends and extended relatives who saw the truth and never wavered. And most importantly, I still had myself. I didn't crumble. I didn't give in. I protected what I had built not out of greed, but out of dignity. The $45,000 fund helped us buy a future, a home, stability. But what it really gave us was freedom, freedom from manipulation, freedom from guilt, freedom from a family that believed love was conditional on obedience. I stood up for myself, and I won not just in court, but in life. Thanks for watching this powerful story. If you found it moving or relatable, don't forget to like the video to show your support. Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. And if you enjoy real-life, inspired stories with strong emotions and satisfying endings, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss a new upload. See you in the next story.